in. There, that ought to keep it. Now when you're old and you got a pot belly, you can tell your grandchildren that you used to fit into that uniform.
Ah, let the Maws have it. I'm just glad to be back in civics.
Well, then that makes 3 of us, because Mary and I are sure glad to have you back with us.
Well, staying here with you just for the time being, though, till I can get settled.
Oh, you're welcome to stay here as long as you like. You're one of the family, you know.
Yeah, but when I get a job, if I get a job...
Oh, you could have any job you wanted.
Yeah. Well, I could have the world with a red fence around it if I didn't care what it cost.
Oh, now, don't start that again. Those union dues aren't that much money.
It isn't the money at all. It's the idea. I just don't like the idea.
Well, what have you got against the unions?
Oh, I got no beef with the union.
Well, then stop talking like a free rider. Bill, you've never held down a real job. Well, being in the Navy, you haven't had a chance to. And what you don't understand is that labor's got to have the right to organize. Organization costs money.
And if it's my money, why don't I have something to say about it?
Because the union speaks for you. It'd be a madhouse if everybody tried to speak for himself. It would wreck the union.
Now, look here, I'm not trying to wreck anything. I just want to make up my own mind.
Hey, is this a private feud, or can anybody get in?
Well, as long as we keep it in the family. How are you, Uncle Frank?
Hi, Bill. Jim?
Hi, Frank.
Well, how's the sailor boy?
Still fighting.
Now, maybe that's all right. Depends on what you're fighting for.
I'll tell you what I'm fighting for.
Okay.
Today I applied for a job.
Yeah?
Told him I was a mechanic in the Navy, and smacko, I'm hired. If I join a union. Now, how do I know if I want to join a union?
He's just making a mountain out of a molehill.
Call it a molehill if you like. It still goes. Unless I shell out initiation fees and union dues, I don't work. Now, what I want to know is, why did I spend 4 years in uniform? Protecting my rights, the Navy called it, if somebody's going to take them away from me.
By joining a union, you're protecting your rights.
Says who?
When you join a union, you're protected against unfair practices.
And who's going to protect me from the unions? Now, am I too dumb and stupid to figure out for myself what's good for me? I don't know. I might even want to join when I've had a chance to look it over.
Well, then look it over. Think about it.
In the meantime, I can just sponge off you and Mary. Out of a job because I haven't joined. Because I haven't got the right not to. Is that it? It just burns me out.
You always were one to plow into things, and now somebody's got to you with a lot of propaganda, and
Nobody's got to me with anything. Anybody with a grain of sense can see there's something rotten here. Something wrong.
Oh, let's break this up. Frank's been listening to lawyers argue downtown all day.
No. This is interesting.
Here.
Oh, thank you, Mary.
Well, if you're going to get in this argument, organize it, will you?
Well, perhaps we'd better start by defining the issue.
That sounds like a judge.
Well, that'd be a help. I can't follow either one of them.
The argument here is the right to work principle.
I don't think so. I think we all agree that everybody has a right to a job.
Oh, now, let's be sure we get this straight. It's not the right to a job. It's the right to work, whether or not an employee belongs to a union. Right to work is just another way of saying anti-compulsion.
And compulsory unions mean a man has to join a union before he can work. And that's the mess we're in right now.
it's not a mess. It's something we got to keep, or we're going to wreck the whole union movement.
Now let's wait for the judge.
I thought I was off the bench for the day. Well, boys, you're both my nephews. I don't want to side with either one. Actually, your sides aren't too far apart.
Too far for me to ever see his side.
Not the way you're going at it. Now, while I've been here, you've both sprayed a lot of shot. Labeled things right and wrong, accused unions, berated non-union people. What say we go at this objectively, get right down to the basic issues?
Okay, you name it. What are the basic issues?
Well, first of all, there's a question of rights, democratic rights. There's a democratic principle involved here. There's a moral principle, too.
There's nothing morally or democratically wrong in joining a union.
I didn't say there was anything wrong in joining a union. What I'm getting at is this. Does compelling someone to do something fit in with the American idea of freedom?
No, sir. It's not democratic. I don't like being told I've got to do something.
That's because compulsion goes hand in hand with monopoly.
Yeah. It's the idea of the little guy at the mercy of a union boss.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that'd come up. That union boss angle. Look, all unions aren't run by bosses.
I know that. Take our bar association. It's a free association. An attorney can join or not join. It's up to him. But that does not take away his right to practice the law.
Well, the same is true of my union. A couple of years ago, when the union bosses tried to move in on our union, they didn't get any place. And you know why? Because we run our own union. If we don't like what's going on, we're free to step out.
And don't you also have the option of joining or not joining?
Well, yeah.
Then your union is anti-compulsion right now, isn't
Well,
it?
yeah, but
and it's a good union by your own say-so.
You're darn right.
Then what's to prevent all unions from being good unions under a right-to-work law?
You can't tell me that the right to workers are out to make good unions. They're out to wreck them. And I don't want that.
Neither do they. You couldn't wreck unions if you tried. Unions are completely protected by American law. Employees have the right to organize, that's fact. Workmen have the right to strike. That's been tested and upheld in the courts.
Oh, now, come on, Frank. You know as well as I do that management is waiting to use a right-to-work law to replace union men with scabs.
How can they? Even I know that if a union has a contract, that contract will keep a union man from being fired unless there's good cause.
Exactly. And there's a law that says the same thing. Neither the contract nor the law is in any way affected by the right-to-work proposal.
Okay. Okay, so there's a law. But you can't tell me that all this high and mighty talk about democracy and right and wrong stuff is the exclusive property of right-to-workers. How come, if compulsory unions are morally wrong, a Protestant minister, a Catholic priest, and a Jewish rabbi all stand behind them?
I believe I know where you got that. From the film strip put out by the American Federation of Labor, wasn't it?
Well, I saw that too at my last club meeting. And the minister and the priest and the rabbi were all against the right-to-work laws. Thought they ought to be repealed.
Mary, if you look long enough, you can always find someone who has made a statement that agrees with yours. That's what the opponents of right to work have done. But of course, there are other religious leaders who feel just as strongly that right to work measures are the answer to union abuses. The Reverend Francis J. Cannell is one. He says that Catholic principles do not require that every worker is bound to join a union. Mary, do you happen to have a copy of A Man Called Peter?
Oh, yes, I'll get it for you. Did you see the movie made from that book?
Yes, I did.
Peter Marshall was sure a wonderful man.
Yes, he was remarkable. Had a very interesting career. He was a mechanical engineer in Scotland, belonged to a union several years before he entered the ministry.
Here it is.
Thank you. He wrote a great sermon, The American Dream. Yes, here it is. Mary, I'd like to have you read it, starting right there.
I want to make it clear that I was a member of a union. I want it clearly understood that I not only believe in, but I'm willing to defend labor's right to organize, labor's right collectively to bargain, labor's right to strike. I am also ready to defend the right of a man to join a union if he wants to, and also the right of another man to stay out of it if he'd rather. I believe that is concerned with fundamental rights in the American Bill of Rights. Labor in this country does not realize how well off it is, nor do the leaders of labor unions seem to realize that with power comes responsibility, and that these things are joined together by the eternal laws of God.
That's what Peter Marshall had to say about it. He believed firmly in unions, just as you do, Jim. But he believed just as firmly in man's right to join or not to join a union.
Now, look, all this who said what's not going to get us anyplace.
Oh, you're the one who brought it up.
All right. All right, so we're deadlocked on that. But no matter what authority you quote, you're not going to be able to get around this. You get your right to work laws, and you're going to get a whole slew of deadbeats, free riders, Sure, they'll work and they'll enjoy all the privileges, but they won't pay their dues because they don't have to, and the free riders will strangle the union.
Now, Jim, maybe that's what you've heard, but what do you think? Do you honestly have so little feeling for your fellow man as to think that most of them are crooks? If the union bargains for them to their advantage, they'll do what's morally right. They won't free ride. And remember this, it was unions themselves who insisted on the right to bargain for all, not just their own members. They got that right. Isn't it a fact that non-union employees are required by law to accept unions' representation whether they want it or not?
Well, yeah, but that...
But what? Don't most of the people down to your place belong of their own free will?
Sure.
I thought so. And they'll keep on doing so. This country isn't made up of 160 million Americans who are looking for a free ride. Don't you let anybody tell you so.
But there are free riders.
Yes, there are a few. But more than likely, what the union brands as a free rider is an honest workman who's protesting against union practices he does not like.
I don't know, but if I had anything to say about it, I'd say that maybe this right-to-work idea had some pretty good arguments.
But you do have something to say about it, Mary. Women, for their own sakes and for the sake of their children, have a big stake in individual liberty, in the things that are guaranteed in the Constitution. A right-to-work law will protect the constitutional rights of working men and women without conflicting in any way with the fundamental rights of organized labor.
You know, maybe somebody should bring up the right-to-work side at my next club meeting.
That somebody could very well be you.
Well, looks like I'm the only holdout.
Are you a holdout, Jim? What are you holding out for? Are you holding out for the idea that an employee ought to join the union because he's forced to? Are you holding out for the principle that we must deny men freedom of choice because we mistrust them? Are you holding out for the idea that only the union and not the man can say what's best for working men? Are you holding out for what you've been told against your own ideas of what's morally right? We're all faced with a decision here. Think it over, Jim. You decide.